I turned the key in my beach house lock and heard music pulsing like a Miami club. On the counter was a receipt for $2,980. I had not been here all week. Then my sister, Sloane, looked up, smiling. "You're just in time. We were testing the Ocean View bed." They thought I would cry. I just hit the button security cams, bank statements, and called the police. My name is Zara Barnes. I stood in the foyer of my own home, but it felt alien, contaminated. The drive down to Blue Harbor, North Carolina, was supposed to be the decompression valve. I had just survived 6 solid weeks of hell at Aurelia Systems, a digital compliance firm that specialized in sterile, windowless rooms, forensic audits, and the kind of high-stakes pressure that grinds your teeth down to the nerves. Aurelia pays the bills, it pays for this house, this sanctuary, but it demands its pound of flesh. I had been driving for 4 hours, the gray city skyline finally dissolving into the low country pines. My entire being focused on the moment I would unlock this door and hear nothing but the surf. The quiet was gone. The music wasn't just loud. It was structural, a deep, synthetic, relentless thudding that vibrated through the soles of my shoes and rattled the coastal glass in the entryway windows. It was the kind of bass you feel in your chest, invasive and unwelcome, and the smell. It hit me right after the sound. A toxic cloud that rejected the clean salt air I'd been craving. It was a layered offense stale beer, the sharp antiseptic tang of spilled vodka, and the acrid bite of cigarette smoke. I had expressly forbidden smoking anywhere on the property, but the smell was ground into the air. It mixed with the sickly synthetic cherry stench of cheap vape juice and a cloud of perfume so heavy and floral it was suffocating. I took one step further in. My foot didn't glide on the polished heart pine floors. It stuck. The wood was tacky, coated in a film of spilled alcohol and God knows what else. To my left, my favorite floor lamp, the one with the articulated brass arm and linen shade, was knocked onto its side. The shade was crushed, the bulb housing exposed like a broken bone. I walked into the great room, my stomach tightening into a cold knot, the white linen sofa, my sanctuary piece, the one I had waited 3 months for, the one I curled up on to watch the storms roll in. It was unrecognizable, streaked and saturated with something dark red. Wine punch. It looked like a crime scene. Cushions were tossed on the floor, my cashmere throw blankets balled up in a corner, and a layer of crumbs and unidentifiable debris covered every surface. Then I saw the people. Strangers. A young man I had never seen before, holding his phone up, walked backward past the entryway, narrating, "And this is the main villa. Guys, place is sick. Our friend is letting us crash here all week." He was live streaming. He panned the phone, the lens sweeping past me, pausing directly on my face. "Whoa, looks like the real owner just showed up," he said, his voice dripping with the manufactured excitement of a reality TV show. "Busted. This is getting good. Y'all, the friend's villa just got real." My face was now broadcast to his followers. I felt a hot flash of humiliation and rage, but I kept my expression frozen. I ignored him and looked toward the source of the chaos. The heavy glass sliders to the ocean deck were wide open, letting the cold, damp air mix with the fug of the party. There were at least 12, maybe 15 people out there, huddled around the fire pit I hadn't even set up for the season. A thick plume of marijuana smoke mixed with the endless clouds of cherry vape. They were laughing, shouting over the music, oblivious. And then, in the center of the kitchen, I saw her, my younger sister, Sloane. Her hair was a shade of platinum blonde, so bright it looked chemical, pulled up messily. She wore a tiny black dress that looked more like lingerie, her makeup heavy. Beside her, leaning against my marble island like he owned it, was her husband, Derek Vale. Tattoos snaked up his neck from under his t-shirt, and he wore a flat-brimmed cap backward. He wasn't laughing. He just wore a permanent smirk that served the same purpose. He saw me first. He nudged Sloane with his elbow, his smirk widening. He didn't bother to stand up straight. Sloane turned, her eyes wide with a moment of pure animal panic. Then, just as quickly, the panic was gone. replaced by that familiar, stubborn mask of defiance. "Zara," she said, her voice overly bright, "you're early." But they weren't the center of gravity in the room. Through the haze, in the main living area, the one I had furnished with the best views, sat the real royalty: Evelyn and Martin Vale, Derek's parents. Martin was sunk deep into my best armchair, a glass of dark liquid in his hand, idly watching the party outside. Evelyn, however, held court on the chaise lounge. She was immaculate, even in this chaos. Her cream-colored linen pants were perfectly pressed, her jewelry subtle but clearly, agonizingly expensive. She possessed that impenetrable, old money aura, a practiced stillness that radiated disapproval and absolute entitlement in equal measure. They weren't partying, they were occupying. Evelyn met my gaze. Her eyes were cold, assessing. She wasn't embarrassed to be caught. She was annoyed that I had interrupted. "This is my house, Sloane," I said. My voice was dangerously low, and I refused to shout over the music. "What is this?" "It's a party, obviously," Derek answered for her, taking a long drag from a vape pen and blowing the offensive cherry smoke toward my ceiling. "It's an invasion," I corrected him, my eyes scanning the room, cataloging the damage, the strangers, the sheer disrespect. "I want everyone out, now." This got a reaction. The music seemed to dip slightly as a few heads turned. The guy with the phone hurried closer, eager to catch the confrontation. Sloane pushed herself off the counter, her false bravado kicking in. She crossed her arms, a gesture I had seen since she was 6 years old. "Oh, come on. Zara, don't be like this." "Like what?" "Like this." She gestured around, at me, at my house. "You're never even here. We just wanted to use it for one weekend. What is the big deal? The audacity of it, the minimization, the receipt on the counter for $2,980, dated 3 days ago, flashed in my mind. "The big deal," I said, keeping my voice perfectly level, my anger hardening into something cold and sharp, "is that this is not a family property. This house, this land, these broken lamps, are mine, Zara Barnes, sole owner. You were not invited, and these people," I gestured to the strangers, "are trespassing." A collective, mocking ooh sound rippled through the guests who were now watching the drama unfold. The guy with the phone grinned. "She said trespassing, damn." Sloane's face flushed a deep, angry red under her heavy foundation. "You always do this. You always hold it over us. Just because you make more money." "I hold nothing," I said, my gaze shifting from her to Evelyn, who was now watching me with narrowed, reptilian stillness. "I am telling you to leave my property, all of you." While Sloane geared up for another childish outburst, I slid my phone from my coat pocket. My thumb moved with the same precision I used for my work at Aurelia. I bypassed the texts and emails and opened the app I'd paid a small fortune to install, the Harbor Nest security app. I didn't look at the live camera feeds. I went straight to the control panel, to the activity log. I didn't need to see the video to know. I pressed the event flag. A small dialog box appeared. I typed, "Intrusion, unauthorized entry, property occupied by multiple unknown parties." I time-stamped it. I hit save. The digital record was started. The event was logged. They thought this was a family argument, a messy squabble they could guilt me out of later. I had just officially classified it as a home invasion. My command to turn off the music hung in the stale, smoky air. The sudden silence was absolute, amplifying the drip of a spilled drink on the counter and the nervous shuffle of feet. The partygoers, who moments before had been laughing, now looked like cornered animals, their eyes darting between me and my sister. Derek was the first to break the tension. He let out a short, ugly bark of a laugh, pushing himself off the island, or what he sneered, the tattoos on his neck flexing. "The successful sister is going to ground us, put us in time out." He took a deliberate step toward me, radiating a cheap, aggressive energy, always making things a big deal. "Zara, You come in here, acting like you are queen of the world. Just relax. Have a drink. It is a party. It was a party. Derek, I said, my voice cutting through his bravado. Now it is an eviction, and I am not your sister. Zara, please, Sloane started, her voice taking on the whining, pleading tone that had worked on our parents our entire lives. Do not be like this. Like what? Someone who expects her home to be the way she left it. Before Sloane could answer, a new voice entered the standoff. It was low, smooth, and coated in generations of privilege. Evelyn Vale. She had risen from the chaise lounge, not in a hurry, but with a slow, deliberate grace, as if the stained cushions and hostile atmosphere were merely an inconvenience she had to manage. She moved to stand beside her son, a united front of entitlement. I think, she said, her eyes cold and assessing, that we have all had a very long day. We drove 4 hours from Raleigh to be here. Zara, Martin and I are tired. We have absolutely no intention of getting back in a car in the middle of the night. She gave a thin, bloodless smile. Sloane assured us you were more than happy to host. We will be leaving in the morning, after a proper breakfast. She spoke as if this were a negotiation, as if her fatigue outweighed my property rights. She was used to announcing her intentions and having the world bend to accommodate them. Sloane lied. I said, my gaze locked on Evelyn. You are not guests. You are intruders, and you will not be staying the night. This was the pivot, the psychological spin. They were the invaders. But she was framing me as the inhospitable hostess. I felt my pulse quicken, but I matched her cold stare. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I did not open the security app. I opened my photo album. I scrolled back 3 months to the closing. I tapped the image and enlarged it. I held it up so she, Sloane, and Derek could see it clearly. It was the final page of the deed, the property description, the county seal, and the signature line. Zara Barnes, it read, sole owner. This is not a vacation home to be passed around. I stated, my voice flat. This is my asset, my property. You are not on any agreement. You are not on the title. You are here without my permission. Sloane finally exploded. Her face, which had been pale, turned blotchy and red. You are such a bitch, Zara. You gave me a key. You said I could use it. You gave me a key. Her voice was a shriek, cracking with rage. I gave you a key, I said, my voice dropping dangerously low, forcing her to be quiet to hear me. For an emergency. A real one, like a hurricane evacuation, or if your apartment burned down. A planned party with 15 people, your in-laws, and a live stream is not an emergency. It is a violation. It is just semantics, Sloane shrieked. It is the law, I countered. The live streaming guy, who had been quiet, raised his phone again, edging closer. Damn, the cold old sister is dropping the law. This is better than reality TV. What is she going to do next? Evict her own family. His followers were apparently commenting, because he laughed. Yeah, she is definitely the villain here. Hashtag Ice Queen. I felt the heat rise in my face, a hot flush of public humiliation. This stranger, this parasite, broadcasting my violation to an unseen audience. I kept my face blank, turned away from him, and used my free hand to navigate. I found his profile, which I had mentally noted earlier from his narration. I hit the report button. Harassment, violation of privacy, broadcasting without consent. It was a small, digital action, but it was an action. It was a boundary. I looked back at the room, at Evelyn's calculating smirk, at Derek's lazy contempt, at Sloane's teary, childish rage. All right, I am done arguing. I looked at my watch. It was just after 11 p.m. You have 30 minutes. At 11:30, I am calling the Blue Harbor Police. I will have every person remaining on this property charged with criminal trespassing. 30 minutes. Get your things, and get out. The room went silent. The party vibe was completely, irrevocably dead. The strangers started looking at each other, their bravado gone. This was no longer a friend's villa, it was a potential arrest. They began to drift toward the door, muttering, grabbing jackets, avoiding my eyes. Evelyn Vale, however, did not flinch. Her thin smile remained, impressed and cold. "I would reconsider that. Dear," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, though it was loud enough for everyone to hear. "You may be successful in your little tech world, but we are the Vales. Our family lawyers have been managing this coast for 3 generations. You call the police, and I promise you, you will regret it. You will be buried in litigation before breakfast." She took a step closer, lowering her voice further. "Defamation, harassment of my family, perhaps even emotional distress. Do you really want to challenge the Vale family lawyer?" It was a direct threat, a declaration of war. She was using her name, her husband's legacy, as a shield to justify breaking into my home. She was telling me that her power was greater than my ownership. I held her gaze. I did not back down, but I also did not escalate. I had the facts. She had assumptions. 30 minutes. I repeated. I turned my back on them. It was a calculated risk, but I needed to move. I walked into the kitchen, the room still smelling of stale beer and that god-awful cherry vape. My hands, which had been rock-steady when I held up the phone, began to shake. A fine, uncontrollable tremor. I clenched them into fists, digging my nails into my palms until the shaking subsided into a dull ache. Breathe, document, log. I grabbed a yellow legal pad and a pen from the desk drawer, the one drawer that seemed undisturbed. I started a new log, separate from the security app. 11:05 p.m. Evelyn Vale verbally threatens litigation, mentions Vale family lawyer as deterrent to police report. 15+ witnesses. I was writing, my hand shaking so badly the letters were jagged. When I heard the whispering, the party guests were clumping near the front door, noisily gathering their things, their voices a low murmur of complaint. Sloan and Derek had moved to the far side of the kitchen island, near the pantry. They thought I was too busy, too angry, too focused on the strangers to hear them. They kept their voices low, hissing at each other. "She is bluffing," Derek muttered, his voice a low rumble. "She will not call the cops on her own sister, not with Mom and Dad here. You do not know her." "Derek," Sloan shot back, her voice tight with panic. She absolutely will. She will ruin everything. We are not ready." "Then let her threaten." Derek said, "Who cares? It does not matter. We have the plan. The real plan. This was just a bonus weekend. So she is mad. So what?" Sloan was quiet for a beat. I kept writing, my head down, my entire body focused on listening. "But the wire is not set up yet," Sloan whispered frantically. "And that lawyer, Howard, said we had to have the signed power of attorney before we could access the main accounts. If she calls the cops, the whole thing is blown. They will look at us. They will look at him." My pen stopped. The ink feathered into the paper, the blood drained from my face, and the air in my lungs turned to ice. Power of attorney, wire, Howard, main accounts. This was not a party. This was not a spoiled sister taking advantage. This was not trespassing. I looked down at the receipt on the counter. The one for $2,980. It was not a party expense. This was a reconnaissance mission. This was a robbery in progress. And my sister was the one holding the door open. My heart, which had been pounding with anger, gave one hard, painful thud. It did not just chug. It fell. The music was gone. But the silence it left behind was heavy and suffocating. The 30 minutes I had given them evaporated in a toxic cloud of muttered curses, the scrape of bags being dragged across my floors, and the slamming of the front door. The strangers, the ones who had been laughing and live-streaming, scurried out first, a herd of cockroaches exposed by a sudden light. They did not apologize. They just looked annoyed that their free ride was over. Sloan and Derek were next. Derek shouldered a large duffel bag, his eyes narrowed into slits of pure, undiluted hatred. He looked at me as if I were the one who had wronged him. Sloan was crying, but they were not the tears of remorse. They were the hot, angry tears of a child whose favorite toy had been taken away. Evelyn and Martin Vale were the last to leave. They had not packed in a hurry. They moved with the same deliberate, insulting calm they had maintained all evening. Martin, silent and weary, simply walked out, but Evelyn paused in the doorway, close enough that I could smell her expensive, powdery perfume, a scent that now seemed predatory. "You have made a very serious mistake, Zara," she said, her voice a low, smooth threat. "This is not how civilized people handle a disagreement. You have embarrassed my family. This is not over." I just looked at her. I did not say a word. I simply stared, my expression flat, until she was forced to break eye contact and turn away. I shut the heavy oak door behind them. I turned the deadbolt. The solid thunk of the bolt sliding into the frame was the first real secure sound I had heard since I arrived. I stood in the foyer, my back against the door, and let the full weight of the violation wash over me. The house was silent, save for the hum of the wine fridge and the distant, rhythmic crash of the surf. The air was thick with the chemical cherry of the vape smoke and the acrid tang of stale beer. My legs felt weak, but I knew I could not sit down. Not on my sofa, not in this contaminated space. The rage from the confrontation was ebbing, replaced by something colder, sharper, a forensic focus. The words I had overheard power of attorney, Howard, wire were repeating in my head like a ticker tape. I pulled out my phone. The Aurelia Systems auditor in me took over. Document, verify, contain. I did not call anyone. I opened the camera app. I started with the most obvious damage. My gaze was methodical, sweeping the room like a scanner. The hardwood floors, which I had painstakingly restored, were covered in a sticky film. But worse, there were deep, jagged scratches near the sliding glass door, as if someone had dragged a heavy piece of metal furniture across the wood. I photographed the gouges, the flash glinting off the raw pine. I walked to the bar. The white quartz countertop was a swamp of spilled liquor, drying into concentric, sticky rings. A lime wedge was ground into the surface. Worse, someone had used a knife directly on the stone, leaving a series of shallow cuts. I photographed the bar. I went out onto the deck. The ocean air was clean, and for a moment I could breathe. Then I saw the railing. My beautiful teak railing, the one I oiled by hand every spring. 3 distinct, charred black circles were burned into the wood. The grain blackened and bubbled. Cigars. They had stubbed out lit cigars on my house. I photographed the burns. Back inside, I documented the overturned lamp, its linen shade crushed. I documented the white sofa, the dark red stain now soaking deep into the fibers, a permanent scar. But all of this was just the party. This was the superficial wound. I was looking for the infection underneath. Sloane's words from earlier echoed in my mind. We were testing the ocean view bed. I walked down the hall to the primary guest suite, the one with the best view, the one Evelyn and Martin had occupied. The door was open. The room was a disaster. The bed, which I kept made with high thread count Egyptian cotton sheets, was stripped. The sheets themselves were in a damp, balled-up heap in the corner. The comforter was on the floor. The closet door, a heavy mirrored panel, was slid wide open, and inside the closet, the small digital mini-safe I kept bolted to the wall, the one I used for spare keys and emergency cash, was ajar. My blood ran cold. The digital keypad was dark, the door hanging open by an inch. I never, ever leave that open. I pulled the door. It was empty, as I expected, but that was not the point. They had been in it, or they had the code. How did they get the code? Then I saw the closet floor. It was not empty. It was littered with shopping bags, high-end, glossy bags from the boutiques in town, Shoreline Outfitters, Mariner's Table, a designer leather goods store. I reached into one bag, a brand-new leather handbag. The tags were still attached. $450. I reached into another, a cashmere sweater, tags on. In another, men's clothing. And on the dresser, next to a half-empty glass of water, was the receipt I had seen in the kitchen, the one for $2,980. It was from Shoreline Outfitters, a charge slip, not a cash receipt, and the name imprinted on it was mine, Zara Barnes. The signature was a sloppy, unrecognizable scrawl. My hands were perfectly steady now. The tremor was gone, replaced by an icy electric precision. I pulled out my phone. I bypassed the camera. I opened my banking app. Face ID recognized me. The screen flashed, and my stomach hollowed out. It was not just the one charge. It was a deluge, a full week of financial assault. The charge from Shoreline Outfitters, dated 3 days ago. Another charge from Mariner's Table. A 4-figure dinner bill for $620. Multiple gas station fill-ups. And then the withdrawals, the ones that made my throat close. 3 separate ATM withdrawals. $500, $500, $500, the maximum daily limit. 3 days in a row, $1,500 in cash. Gone. They had my card number. They had my PIN. This was not a party that got out of hand. This was a planned, systematic theft. I left the violated bedroom, my mind racing. Power of attorney. Howard. This was not just a shopping spree. This was funding. This was a prelude to something much, much bigger. I went to the small, built-in desk in the main hallway. It is where I keep the boring things: house paperwork, manuals, spare stationery. The top drawer was slightly open. I pulled it. My file folders were neat. I am always neat. But one was out of place. A single green folder, labeled Harbor Property. It was slightly askew, pushed back at an angle as if shoved in hastily. I lifted it out. My heart was pounding, a hard, painful drum against my ribs. I opened it. The top document was a copy of the deed, the one I had flashed on my phone earlier. Underneath it, a copy of my most recent property tax assessment, and tucked behind that, a printed-out statement from my private investment account, the one managed by Aurelia's firm, the one I never, ever discuss with anyone. These papers were not just viewed, they were handled. They were out of order. They had been moved, studied, assessed. As I lifted the folder, something slid from behind it and clattered onto the desk. A phone. It was not my phone. It was a cheap, black, prepaid burner. As it hit the wood, the screen lit up. It was already unlocked, and it was open to the photo gallery. I stopped breathing. The screen was filled with thumbnails, dozens of them. I tapped the most recent one. It was a close-up. Brightly lit photograph of my investment statement, the full balance, the account numbers, all clearly visible. I swiped. The next photo, my deed. Swipe, my property tax bill. Swipe, a close-up of my driver's license, which I had foolishly left in the desk drawer. Swipe, my social security card. Swipe, a clear close-up photograph of my signature from a bank document. They had not just looked at my files. They had staged them. They had created a complete digital portfolio of my identity. I felt nauseous. I backed away from the desk. My eyes scanned the surface, looking for anything else. In the small, ceramic jewelry box where I keep spare paper clips, I saw it. A tiny black rectangle, a USB flash drive. It was no bigger than my thumbnail. I pulled it out, my fingers feeling numb. A small, neat label was affixed to it, printed from a label maker. It had 2 words: Harbor Howard, The Whisper, Sloan. We have the plan. Howard, power of attorney, wire. This was it. This was the payload. This tiny piece of plastic, I was certain, held the mechanism to steal my entire life, as if summoned. My own phone buzzed violently on the desk, making me jump. The screen lit up. It was my mother. A wall of text messages, one after another, filling the lock screen. Sloan just called me, hysterical. She said you threw her and the veils out in the middle of the night. In the dark. On the side of the road. Zara, what is wrong with you? Call me this instant. This is not how we raised you. You are cruel. She is your sister. Cruel. I looked at the Harbor Howard USB drive in my palm. I looked at the burner phone full of my stolen identity. I looked at the charred ruin of my railing. I did not reply to my mother. The fog of shock and betrayal cleared, and the Aurelia Systems training took over. Containment, neutralization, reporting. I went back to the kitchen and grabbed the legal pad. I began documenting. I spent the next hour photographing everything, not as a homeowner, but as a prosecutor. Every stain, every burn mark, every single receipt. I took a high-resolution photo of the Harbor Howard USB drive. I photographed the screen of the burner phone, capturing the album of my stolen documents. Then, I went into the Harbor Nest security app. I took screenshots of the entry log. It showed the exact time Sloane's key fob was used to unlock the door. 4 days ago, 11:17 a.m. I cross-referenced it with the timestamp on the first fraudulent ATM withdrawal from my bank account, 11:45 a.m. A perfect, damning match. My first call was not to the police. It was to the Harbor Nest 24-hour security line. "This is Zara Barnes. Account number 920 Delta," I said, my voice cold and even. "I have a priority security breach. I need all key fob access codes for my property at Blue Harbor deactivated immediately. Yes, all of them, including the master. I need all digital passcodes wiped. I will be the only one authorized for entry. Effective. Right now. Send a technician at 8 a.m. to rekey every physical lock on the property. I am declaring all other keys compromised." I hung up before they could ask questions. My second call was to the 24-hour fraud department of my bank. "My name is Zara Barnes. I am reporting multiple instances of credit and debit card fraud. Effective immediately. Card number ending in..." I read it off. "I am reporting unauthorized ATM withdrawals totaling $1,500. I am reporting a fraudulent charge at Shoreline Outfitters for $2,980. Yes, I am confirming these are fraudulent. Freeze the account. Freeze all associated accounts. Cancel all cards. Issue new ones. Send them to my primary address in the city, not the beach house, and I want a priority flag put on my entire file. No new accounts. No wire transfers. No changes to power of attorney without verbal, multi-factor authentication with me. Personally, I do not care what paperwork you receive. It must be me, on the phone." I hung up. The house was cold, violated, and smelled of betrayal. But the locks were changing, and the money had stopped bleeding. The first 2 perimeter walls were secure. Now, I could deal with the actual crime. My first call was to the Blue Harbor Police Department. I used the non-emergency line. It was 2:13 in the morning, when the dispatcher, her voice thick with overnight fatigue, answered. I was prepared. My voice was flat, mechanical, and devoid of the hysteria that I felt clawing at the base of my skull. Hysteria is a liability. Data is an asset. "My name is Zara Barnes," I stated clearly. "I am the owner of the property at 1450 Ocean Spray Drive. I have just arrived at my residence to find it has been forcibly entered and occupied. The individuals have now left, but I am reporting a breaking and entering, significant vandalism, multiple instances of credit card fraud, and systematic identity theft." There was a pause. "Ma'am, you said they've left. Are you in any immediate danger?" "The immediate physical threat is gone," I said. "The financial and criminal threat is ongoing. I require an officer to take a report and survey the scene. The premises have been compromised. An officer is on their way. Ms. Barnes, please wait outside if you feel unsafe." "I am secure," I said, and hung up. I stood in the center of my wrecked living room and waited. I did not pace. I did not cry. I simply stood, breathing in the toxic air of my sister's betrayal, and cemented my resolve. This was not a family matter. This was a felony. 20 minutes later, a cruiser pulled into my driveway, its headlights sweeping across the front windows. An officer emerged, and she did not look happy. She walked up the path, her flashlight beam dancing over the porch. I opened the door before she could knock. "Ms. Barnes?" she asked. "Yes, thank you for coming." Her name tag read, Officer Dana Brennan. She looked to be in her mid-40s, with a compact, capable build and the kind of tired, appraising eyes that suggested she had seen every possible variation of human stupidity. She stepped into the foyer and stopped dead. Her head tilting, her nostrils flared. "Wow," she said, her voice dry. "Smells like a fraternity party died in here." "That's an accurate assessment, officer." "You said you were reporting fraud," she asked, her gaze sweeping the overturned lamp, the stained sofa. "The party was a cover, a distraction. The real crime scene is in my office and guest suite. Please, follow me." I led her through the house with the precise, detached air of a tour guide. I did not editorialize. I did not say, "Look at what my sister did to my sofa," I said. "Note the unidentified red liquid, likely wine, staining the primary sofa, resulting in material damage." I pointed to the cigar burns. Teak railing, defaced with multiple cigar burns. I took her to the guest suite. "This is the room the primary intruders, Evelyn and Martin Vale, occupied. The bedding has been stripped. The closet safe, which I left secured, was found open." Brennan shone her flashlight into the open safe. "Anything taken from in here?" "I keep emergency cash and a spare key. Both are gone, but the more significant items are these." I pointed to the collection of designer shopping bags. "Purchased," I discovered, with my stolen credit card information. I led her back to the kitchen island, which I had cleared and wiped down. On it, I had arranged my evidence in 3 neat exhibits, just as I would for an audit at Aurelia. "Exhibit A," I said, pointing to the stack of printed receipts. The fraudulent purchases, totaling nearly $3,000, and the bank statement showing $1,500 in unauthorized ATM withdrawals. "Exhibit B," I pointed to the screenshots from my Harbor Nest security app. "This is the entry log. It shows the front door was unlocked 4 days ago, at 11:17 a.m., using a key fob registered to Sloan Barnes. Here," I pushed a bank statement forward, "is the timestamp for the first $500 ATM withdrawal, 11:45 a.m., 28 minutes later, from a bank branch 2 miles from this house." Officer Brennan's eyebrows shot up. She was impressed. "That's good. Clean evidence, Ms. Barnes." "And Exhibit C," I said. I pointed to the burner phone and the small, labeled USB drive, both of which I had placed in separate Ziploc bags. "These were found in my desk. The phone's photo gallery contains high-resolution photographs of my Social Security card, my driver's license, my signature, and my private investment statements. The USB drive is labeled Harbor Howard. I overheard the intruders mentioning a Howard, a power of attorney, and a wire transfer. I believe this is evidence of an active and ongoing conspiracy to liquidate my assets." Brennan stared at the 2 bags. Her entire demeanor shifted. This was no longer a vandalism call. This was not a rowdy party. This was major. "Conspiracy to commit fraud," she said, her voice sharp. She pulled on a pair of nitrile gloves. "Mind if I—" "Please." She carefully bagged the items as official evidence. She photographed everything I had, documenting the scene with her own camera. "You mentioned Sloan Barnes," Brennan said, her pen poised over her notebook. "What is your relation to her?" "She is my sister," I said. The word was sterile, a biological fact. Nothing more. Brennan let out a long, slow sigh. It was the sound I had been dreading, the sound of judgment. "Ma'am, you understand what you're doing here. 99% of the time, we get a call like this. It's family. We write it up. And by morning, the complainant calls, says they were angry, says they've resolved it internally, and asks us to drop it. This is a very serious set of accusations to make against your own sister." She looked at me, giving me an out. "Are you absolutely certain you want to file this report? Because once I log this evidence, this train is moving. This isn't solving it in-house anymore." I looked at the burner phone, filled with pictures of my life, digitized for theft. I looked at the cigar burns. I thought of Evelyn Vale's cold, superior smile. "Solving it in-house is the leverage they use to commit the crime," I said. my voice as cold as the marble countertop. They were counting on me being too embarrassed, too ashamed, or too loyal to report it. They miscalculated. I met her gaze. Officer, they didn't just steal my money. They were building the tools to steal my entire identity. This is not a family squabble. This is organized crime. Yes, I am pressing charges for every single thing you can find. Officer Brennan nodded slowly, a flicker of what looked like respect in her eyes. Okay, Ms. Barnes, then that's what we'll do. She tore a slip of paper from her notebook and handed it to me. This is your case number. The detective assigned to property crimes will likely be in touch after 0800. Given the digital evidence, they'll probably kick it to the financial crimes unit. She left. I locked the door behind her. It was 3:30 in the morning. I had not slept. My next moves were critical. The police were handling the criminal aspect. I needed to handle the civil and financial containment. I opened my laptop. I did not search for a family lawyer, the kind the Vales had threatened me with. I have contacts through Aurelia Systems. I know what real corporate lawyers look like. I searched the state bar database for the top-rated civil fraud and asset protection attorney in North Carolina. A name came up, Catherine Hale. Her firm's tagline was simple: "We protect what you built." Her specialties were high-stakes embezzlement, complex identity fraud, and asset recovery. At 3:45 a.m., I sent an email to her urgent intake address. The subject line was Urgent Prospective Client, Conspiracy to Defraud Identity Theft, Active Police Report. In the body, I wrote a 500-word summary, as precise as an incident report. I listed the police case number, the names of the involved parties, and the evidence found, including the Harbor Howard drive. I attached the screenshots of the key fob log and the ATM withdrawals. I hit send. At 7 a.m., my phone rang. I had not slept. I had been sitting on the one clean chair in the living room, watching the sun rise over the ocean, the gray light illuminating the full scope of the disaster. "This is Catherine Hale," a voice said. It was crisp, fast, and completely devoid of sympathy. "I read your summary, Ms. Barnes. It's efficient. I'm impressed. And I'm appalled. I'm taking your case. I'm clearing my morning." "Thank you for calling me back," I said, my body rigid with tension. "There's no time for that. Here is what you will do, in this order. 1. Do not speak to anyone. I mean anyone. Not your sister, not her husband, and especially not her mother-in-law. Evelyn, not your parents, not a mutual friend. They will call. They will text. They will email. You will not reply. You will forward every single attempt at communication to me. They will try to guilt you. That guilt is a legal tactic. You will not engage. Mute their numbers if you have to. 2, she continued. By 8 a.m., I want you to call all 3 credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Lock your credit. Do not just place a fraud alert. A fraud alert is a sticky note. A lock is a digital wall. They are separate processes, and you will do both. No one applies for anything in your name. Period. 3. You enabled bank alerts. Good. Now, call them back. Enable push notifications for everything, a $1 charge, a failed login attempt, a balance inquiry, 24/7. I want your phone blowing up if someone so much as thinks about your accounts. I understand, I said, already scribbling notes. I will be filing for a temporary civil restraining order against Sloan Barnes, Derek Vale, and Evelyn Vale by noon. Citing the active police investigation and the evidence of conspiracy, they are not to come within 500 yards of you or this property. Now, get to work. Call me when the credit locks are done. The line clicked dead. I felt a surge of adrenaline, the kind I usually only got when closing a major deal. I was not a victim. I was a client. I made the calls. The credit bureaus were first. Locking my name down felt like armoring a fortress. My next call was to my homeowner's insurance. I need to open a claim, I said to the agent, for significant property damage, vandalism, and theft, concurrent with a police report for breaking and entering. Case number. As I was on the phone, detailing the cigar burns and the stained sofa, my call waiting beeped. I ignored it. It beeped again, and again. As soon as I hung up with the insurance agent, I saw the backlog. 8 missed calls, all from Sloan. Then the texts began. A rapid-fire assault. Zara, please pick up. I am so sorry. I don't know what happened. I can't believe this. You're ruining my life over a stupid party. Derek's mom is furious. You have to call her and apologize. Please, Zara. The police came to the hotel. The police. They questioned us. What did you tell them? Don't do this to me. I'm your sister. I love you. I read the texts. My face impassive. I took screenshots of every single one. Then, a new text came in, from an unknown number. You arrogant little girl. You will call off the police immediately. Our lawyers will be in touch by noon. We will sue you for malicious prosecution, defamation, and harassment of my family. You have no idea the trouble you have just caused for yourself. We will own that beach house before this is over. It was not signed. It did not need to be. It was Evelyn. I took a screenshot of her text. I saved the voicemails from Sloan. Her voice a frantic, pleading, hysterical mess. I created a new, encrypted folder on my secure cloud drive. I labeled it Veil, Coercion Threats. I forwarded the entire file to Catherine Hale. They thought they were scaring me. They thought family pressure and legal threats were their strongest weapons. They had no idea. They were just building my case for me. The chime of the doorbell cut through the chemical-scented air at exactly 7:10 in the morning. The security technician had just left, the metallic click of the new lock still echoing in my mind. I knew who it was. Catherine's warning was flashing in my head. Do not speak to anyone, especially not your parents. But this was the one confrontation I knew I could not avoid. This was the source code of the entire problem. I walked to the door. I looked through the peephole. My mother was vibrating on the mat, her face a mask of incandescent rage. My father stood behind her, his shoulders slumped, holding a paper coffee cup, looking like a man who had been dragged from his bed to witness an execution. I unlatched the new deadbolt and opened the door. My mother did not wait for an invitation. She pushed past me into the foyer, her eyes scanning the room, but she was not seeing the damage. She was seeing my betrayal. How could you? She hissed. Her voice was low, shaking with a fury that was almost primal. How could you do this to your sister? Mom, do not start. Do not start. I just got off the phone with Sloan. She is hysterical. She is at a motel. Zara, a motel. You threw your own sister out onto the street in the middle of the night, and then you called the police on her. What kind of monster are you? My father drifted in behind her, his eyes immediately finding the stained white sofa, the overturned lamp. He winced, a small, pained expression, but said nothing. That's your sister, my mother yelled, her voice finally cracking, rising to the shrill pitch I had known my entire childhood, the pitch that meant cave in or be destroyed. That, I said, my voice quiet, cold, and utterly exhausted, was a thief who broke into my home, who stole my money, and who was in the process of stealing my entire identity. It was a party, she shrieked, a party that got a little out of hand. You do not call the police on family. Zara, you do not ruin a person's life. They questioned her. They questioned the Veils. You have humiliated this entire family. All for what? For money. Her eyes swept the room again, this time with contempt. For this house. This is what matters to you, more than your own blood. You are cruel. You are a cold, cruel, heartless person. This is not about money, I said, my voice hardening. This is about boundaries. This is about the fact that she and her husband and her in-laws felt entitled to occupy my home, destroy my property, and use my bank accounts as their personal slush fund. My father finally spoke. He set his coffee cup on a clean patch of the counter. Zara, please, your mother is upset. We are all upset. This is a terrible mess. It is, I agreed. But we can handle this, he said, taking a step toward me, his hands raised in a placating gesture. We can settle this, in-house. Sloane, she was wrong. Derek was wrong. But she's your sister. We'll pay for the damages. Sloane can get a second job. We will figure it out. Just call them. Zara, call the police and tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you were angry and you overreacted. I looked at my father, the eternal peacemaker, the man whose entire life philosophy was to smooth things over, to bury the rot, to pretend the tumor did not exist as long as the family looked happy on the surface. I cannot do that, Dad. Why not? My mother snapped. Because you'd have to admit you were wrong, because you'd have to show 1 ounce of compassion. No, I said, turning to face him fully. Because it was not a misunderstanding, I cannot call it off. I gave Officer Brennan evidence of 3 distinct prosecutable crimes: breaking and entering with a compromised key, felony credit card fraud, and conspiracy to commit identity theft, complete with a burner phone and a flash drive full of my stolen financial data. Those are not in-house issues, Dad. That is not a family squabble. That is a criminal enterprise. My father's face went pale. He had not known the details. He had only heard Sloane's hysterical, curated version of events. My mother, however, was unfazed. She saw she was losing the argument on facts. So she reached for the only weapon she had left, the nuclear option. I am telling you, right now, Zara, she said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous command. You have a choice. You stop this. You call that lawyer of yours. You call the police, and you tell them you are dropping every single charge. You tell them you will not cooperate. You stop this madness, and we can figure out how to be a family again. She took a step toward me. Or, you continue this war, and you will be on your own. Do you understand me? You will have no family left, no more Thanksgivings, no Christmas. You will not have us. You will have this house, and that is all you will have. The ultimatum hung in the air, thick and toxic. This was it, the final card, the one they had played, in smaller ways, my entire life. Conform, or be exiled. I looked at my mother's furious, blotchy face. I looked at my father, who was staring at the floor, refusing to meet my eyes. He was letting her do this. Sloane did this, I said, my voice shaking, not with fear, but with a sudden, clarifying rage. Sloane and Derek and the Vales, they are the ones who brought this here, not me. But you can stop it, my mother shrieked. Family protects each other. Family does not systematically try to destroy one of its own. I shot back. If love means I have to sit here and be financially violated, if being family means I have to enable her crimes and let her walk away so she can do it again, then I do not want it. I am done. I will not be your sacrifice anymore. My father flinched, as if I had slapped him. His eyes, for a split second, lifted. They scanned past me, to the deck, through the glass. He saw the railing. I watched his gaze fix on the black, puckered cigar burns marring the expensive teak. I saw the understanding flicker in his eyes. He knew, in that instant, he knew this was not just a party. He knew the depth of the malice. He looked at my mother, who was staring at me with pure hatred. He looked back at the burn mark, and then he said nothing. He looked back down at the floor, his silence a complete and total surrender. He had made his choice. Fine, my mother whispered. It was a terrible, final sound. You have made your bed. Zara, I hope all this stuff keeps you warm at night. Do not call us. We do not have a daughter named Zara anymore. She turned and walked out. My father hesitated for 1 second. He looked at me, his eyes full of a pain I could not even begin to process. Zara, he started, but he could not finish. He just shook his head and followed his wife out the door. The door clicked shut. I stood there, in the absolute, crushing silence of my ruined home. The adrenaline that had been coursing through me for the last 12 hours vanished, as if a plug had been pulled. My legs gave out. I did not fall, but I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the tacky, sticky floor, my arms wrapped around my knees, and for the first time, I wept. It was not for Sloane. It was not for the veils. It was not even for the house. I wept for the brutal, agonizing emotional cost of drawing a single, healthy boundary. I wept for the father who saw the truth and stayed silent. I wept for the mother who had just disowned me to protect the child who was actively trying to ruin me. I wept because I had finally done the right thing, and the price for it was everything I had ever known. I did not know how long I sat there. An hour, maybe 2. The grief was a physical weight, pressing me into the floor. Eventually, the tears stopped. The cold, analytical part of my brain flicks back on. Containment. Forward motion. I got up. I washed my face with ice-cold water. The rest of the day was a blur of logistics, insurance adjusters, cleaning crews who surveyed the scene with professional pity. I forwarded Catherine the file on my parents' visit, documenting the ultimatum. Her reply was swift. "Good. This is a pattern of coercion. It helps." That night, just after midnight, my phone rang. A new number. I let it go to voicemail, but they called right back. I remembered Catherine's advice. I hit record and answered. "Hello? You think you're so smart." A voice slurred. It was Derek. He was clearly profoundly drunk. "You think you're better than everyone. Derek, you are being recorded and this call is being logged." A wet, ugly laugh. "I don't care about your logs. You are destroying my family. My wife. Sloane. She's a mess. My parents. What you did to them. You're a monster. A cold-hearted snake. Good night, Derek. You'll pay for this," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Evelyn's lawyers. They're going to tear you apart. They're going to take this house from you. You're going to be left with nothing." I hung up. I saved the audio file. I emailed it to Catherine. Subject: Derek Vale, 12:04 a.m., intoxicated and threatening litigation. The next day, a courier arrived with a thick cream-colored envelope. It was from the Vale family law firm. It was not a lawsuit, not yet. It was a formal letter of intent. It accused me of malicious prosecution, defamation of the Vale family name, and the intentional infliction of emotional distress. It demanded I immediately file a retraction with the police and cease all contact, or they would proceed with a civil suit seeking damages. I scanned it. I emailed it to Catherine. My phone rang 2 minutes later. It was Catherine. She was not panicked. She was laughing. A short, sharp, genuine laugh. "Oh, this is beautiful," she said. "It's a scare letter. Zara, it's what bullies send when they have no actual case. Emotional distress, for being caught committing a felony defamation. For filing a fact-based police report, this is pure, unadulterated bluster." "So, what do we do?" I asked, a sliver of relief cutting through my exhaustion. "We do nothing," she said, her voice brimming with confidence. "We let them waste their money. They're trying to intimidate you into dropping the criminal charges, because they know if this goes to discovery in a civil suit, they are finished. This is not a threat. Zara, this is a confession. You've got them running scared." She hung up. I looked at the letter, now just a piece of paper. My phone was buzzing again, a cascade of texts from numbers I did not recognize, aunts, cousins, old family friends, all mobilized by my mother, all telling me I was tearing the family apart, that I needed to forgive, that I was being cruel. I looked at the endless stream of incoming guilt. I went into my settings. I muted the threads. I silenced all unknown callers. Then I opened my laptop. I logged into my secure portal for Aurelia Systems. The familiar, sterile interface of my compliance work loaded onto the screen. Spreadsheets, audit logs, data integrity reports. For the first time in my life, the cold, exacting logic of my job did not feel like a burden. It felt like a sanctuary. It was quiet. It was rational. The rules were clear. I felt a strange, unfamiliar lightness, the crushing weight of my family's expectations, the constant, draining performance of being the good daughter, the capable one, who had to absorb everyone else's chaos. It was gone. I did not have to please them anymore. I did not have to manage their feelings. I just had to be right, and I had the receipts to prove I got to work, for a full week. The house was a sterile zone. The cleaning crew had scrubbed the air of smoke and betrayal. The insurance adjuster had documented the physical wounds, and the new locks held firm. I worked. My focus absolute. The chaos of my family had been muted, siloed into a digital folder I forwarded to Catherine. I existed in the cold, clean logic of my work at Aurelia, finding a strange comfort in its rules. Then, my phone rang with a local Blue Harbor number I did not recognize. Ms. Barnes, this is Detective Harper Connolly, Blue Harbor PD. I'm the lead on your case. His voice was deep, professional, and had a gravelly edge that suggested a long career. Yes, Detective, I said, my pen pausing over a spreadsheet. We processed the evidence you provided. The burner phone was a dead end, wiped clean. But the flash drive, that was interesting, and we got a lucky break. We have something here I think you need to see, in person. Can you come down to the station? A new kind of coldness, different from grief, prickled my skin. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The Blue Harbor Police Station was a low brick building that smelled of industrial-strength coffee and anxiety. It was not my world. My world was glass towers and encrypted servers. This was cinder-block walls and forms filed in triplicate. Detective Connolly met me in the lobby. He was tall, with a weary, intelligent face, and he wore a suit that looked like it had been slept in, but his eyes were sharp. Ms. Barnes, thanks for coming in. This way. He led me to a small, windowless interview room. On the table was a laptop. It was not the burner phone. It was a high-end, slim model. Its silver case scratched at the corners. Where did that come from? I asked. One of the party guests you reported, Connolly said, sitting across from me. The kid who was live streaming, to be exact. Turns out he panicked after our officers canvassed the area. He pawned this at a shop 2 towns over. The shop owner is required to log all serial numbers. This one was flagged as stolen in an unrelated case. When we picked it up, we got a warrant for its contents. We thought it might have video from the party. It had something much, much better, or worse, for you. He turned the laptop to face me. The screen was open to an email client. The inbox was active. The kid didn't just sell his laptop, Connolly explained. He sold Derek Vale's laptop. It seems Derek gave it to him as a gift to keep his mouth shut, not realizing his wife's email account was still logged in, auto-login. She never signed out. My blood turned to ice. On the screen was a chain of emails. The from field was Sloan Barnes. The to field was an anonymized, encrypted address. But the display name was one I recognized. Howard. We've been reading this for the past day, Connolly said, his voice flat. It's a correspondence chain going back 3 months. He clicked on the first unread message. I began to read. I read the words my sister had typed in secret, while I was working, while I was paying off the very house she was planning to steal. It started in August. Sloan, writing to Howard. He said you could help. My sister has a place in Blue Harbor. She's never there. It's just wasted. Sitting empty. It's not fair. Derek and I are struggling, and she just hoards all this money. I have a key. Howard's reply was cool. Professional. Possession of a key is a good start. I need more. I need specifics. Account details. Assets. A schedule. My services are not cheap, but they are effective. We can correct this unfairness. She provided him with a full dossier on you. Ms. Barnes, Connolly said, his voice quiet. He clicked to another email. My stomach contracted. It was a list. My work schedule for the next quarter, the dates I was scheduled to be at Aurelia, the dates I usually traveled for audits, my blind spots. I read Sloane's words. She'll be gone for all of October. She has a mini safe in the guest closet. The code is her birth year. Easy. I'm attaching a copy of the deed I photographed last time I was there. Is this what you need? The attachment was the same photo I had seen on the burner phone. She wasn't just bragging. Detective, I whispered, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. She was casing her own family. It gets worse, Connolly said. He scrolled down. The conversation had shifted from information gathering to planning, to logistics. Howard's email. The deed is good. The investment statement is even better. This is a significant asset base. Forget the safe. That's petty cash. We are looking at a full liquidation. My team requires a one-time fee of $50,000 for the documents and the digital transfer protocol. Once the assets are moved, you and your husband will receive 10% of the total liquidation. Wire only, $50,000, plus 10% of my entire net worth. This was not a moment of desperation. This was a business transaction. Sloane's reply. $50,000 is too much. We don't have that. We were going to get it from the party, from the card. That's why they had the party, I said, the pieces clicking into place with a sickening finality. The $2,000 shopping spree, the $1,500 in cash. They weren't just partying, they were raising seed money. Seed money to pay the man who was going to help them rob me blind. Connolly nodded grimly. And here is the how, Ms. Barnes. He opened a different email from Howard. It was a set of instructions. 1. My team will draft a power of attorney and a quitclaim deed. 2. You will provide a high-resolution scan of your sister's signature. 3. We will have the documents notarized through our private network. 4. Once notarized, the quitclaim will be filed with the county, the house becomes yours, the POA will be used to access the investment accounts. 5. All funds will be wired to a series of crypto wallets, untraceable. Connolly closed the laptop. The USB drive you gave us, the one labeled Harbor Howard. Yes. It was not a backup. Ms. Barnes, it was the payload. It contained the high-resolution scans of your driver's license, your social security card, your signature, and it contained the 2 draft documents, waiting to be finalized, a forged power of attorney, and a draft for a fake quitclaim deed. All they needed was the final payment and the green light. I just stared at the blank, silver case of the laptop, a quitclaim deed. They were not just going to empty my bank accounts. They were going to steal my house. They were going to file a piece of paper with the county, and my name would be erased from the title, my signature, my identity, all forged. They wanted to tarnish my life, I whispered. I corrected myself. No, not tarnish. They wanted to take it. They wanted to erase me from my own life, all with a stack of paper. The room was silent. The faint sound of a fax machine whirring in the next room was the only sound. This Howard guy, Connolly said, leaning forward, is not a small-timer. We think he's part of a multi-state ring. They target high-net-worth individuals, often through family members. They use these quitclaim deed forgeries and POA fraud to liquidate assets before the victim even knows they've been hit. This is a major, ongoing investigation. Your sister, she's not just a shoplifter, Ms. Barnes. She's a key conspirator in a federal-level fraud ring. He let that sink in. He let the weight of the words settle on me. This was bigger than Sloane. This was bigger than the Vales. This was a professional criminal conspiracy. Ms. Barnes, Connolly said, his voice careful. You came in here and reported a crime. You had every right to be angry. You had every right to press charges for the trespassing, the vandalism, the theft. Most people would have stopped there. But this is a different level. This is not about a party anymore. This is about a conspiracy that could lead to years in prison for your sister and her husband. He looked me straight in the eye. I need to know, right now. Are you willing to go all the way with this? Are you willing to be the primary witness in a felony prosecution against Sloane Barnes? Because if you are, I am going to the DA and requesting an immediate arrest warrant for her on a new charge, conspiracy to commit wire and deed fraud. I thought of my mother's face, her voice screaming monster. I thought of my father's silence, his complicity. I thought of Evelyn Vale's threatening letter, her belief that her name and her lawyers made her untouchable. I thought of Sloane, crying her fake tears, all while she was holding the digital knife to my throat. I met the detective's gaze. My voice was as steady and cold as a steel rail. They tried to steal my entire life. Detective, they went too far long before I ever picked up the phone. Yes, do it. Get the warrant. Connolly nodded, a grim, final motion. All right, I'll make the call. I stood up, my legs feeling strangely solid. I walked out of the interview room, through the lobby, and into the bright, indifferent sunlight. I knew what this meant. The news of the arrest would not be a quiet affair. It would be a grenade, and I knew, with absolute bone-deep certainty, that when it exploded, my parents would not run to comfort me. The victim, they would run to shield Sloane, the perpetrator. They would blame me for the shrapnel. I prepared myself for the impact. The arrest was not dramatic. There were no sirens, no public confrontation. Detective Connolly was professional. They picked Sloane up at the motel where she was staying with Derek. The charge was not the simple trespassing I had initially reported. It was the one I had agreed to conspiracy to commit wire and deed fraud, a federal-level felony. The first I heard of it was a call from Catherine. It's done. She's in custody. Arraignment is tomorrow at 9 a.m. Be ready. The Vales have already retained counsel. They're not using their family lawyer. They've hired someone from Charlotte, someone expensive. The local news, which barely registered Blue Harbor as more than a tourist spot, suddenly had a story. The online edition of the local paper ran with a headline that made my stomach clench. Local woman sues sister over beach house party. Family feud turns legal. Sues, party, feud. They had reduced a calculated, criminal conspiracy to steal my entire life into a petty squabble over spilled wine. They were painting me as the villain, the cold, rich sister who had sicked the police on her party animal sibling. The narrative was already being written for me, and I was the antagonist. The courtroom the next morning was small, smelling of old varnish and floor wax. I sat in the back, wearing my most severe gray suit from Aurelia, my face an impassive mask. Catherine sat beside me, her briefcase open, her focus absolute. Then they brought Sloane in. She was not in a jumpsuit. They had not processed her that far yet. She was in the clothes she had been arrested in, jeans and a sweatshirt, but she looked wrecked. Her platinum blonde hair was greasy, her eyes swollen and red. The defiant, angry child was gone, replaced by a terrified, cornered animal. She did not look at me. Her lawyer, a man with a silver-black mane of hair and a suit that probably cost more than my first car, stood and introduced himself. He radiated a slick, expensive confidence. But then, the prosecutor stood. Ada Layton for the state, Your Honor. Ada Layton was the opposite of Sloane's lawyer. She was in her 40s, sharp, precise, and wore no-nonsense glasses. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Her words were like surgical instruments. Your Honor, the state is requesting bail be set at $500,000, she began, her voice flat. Sloane's lawyer actually scoffed. Your Honor, that is an absurd and punitive request. This is a family disagreement, a case of trespassing and perhaps youthful indiscretion that got out of hand. My client has no prior record. She is a lifelong resident of this state. She is not a flight risk. Ada Layton waited, perfectly still, until he was finished. Your Honor, she said, her voice cutting through his bluster. This is not a family disagreement, and it is certainly not youthful indiscretion. My office is in possession of a 3-month-long email correspondence between the defendant, Sloane Barnes, and a known multi-state fraud ring. Under the alias Howard, we have digital evidence showing the defendant solicited this ring. Sloane let out a small, choked sob. Ada continued, her voice clinical. In these emails, the defendant provides a complete schedule of her sister's the victim's movements. She provides photographs of the victim's social security card, her driver's license, and her private investment statements. She provides the code to a private safe. She and her co-conspirators were actively drafting a fraudulent power of attorney and a forged quitclaim deed to illegally seize the victim's home and liquidate her entire asset portfolio. The courtroom, which had been murmuring, went dead silent. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked down at Sloane over her glasses. This was not, Ada concluded, a party that got out of hand. This was a calculated, long-term conspiracy to commit identity theft and grand larceny. Stopped only by the victim's unexpected arrival, the defendant was not just a participant. She was the insider who provided the keys to the kingdom. Given the multi-state nature of the conspiracy and the clear, documented intent to liquidate and move assets to untraceable crypto wallets, the state views her as an exceptionally high flight risk. Sloane's expensive lawyer looked, for the first time, like he had been punched. He tried to recover, to pivot back to the family feud narrative, but the damage was done. Ada had laid out the steel trap logic of the crime. The judge was not moved by Sloane's tears. This court is deeply troubled by the predatory nature of these alleged crimes and the significant digital evidence trail, the judge said, her voice booming in the small room. Bail is set at $200,000. The defendant will surrender her passport to this court by 5 p.m. today. She is not to leave the state, and a temporary restraining order is in full effect. She will have no contact, none with the victim, Zara Barnes. Is that understood? Sloane's head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. $200,000. They did not have that kind of money. The Vales did not have that kind of money. Their old money aura was a performance, just like everything else. As Catherine and I walked out, I could hear the lawyer on the phone, his voice no longer slick, but strained, talking about a bondsman, about 10%, about collateral. I made it to my car. My hands were shaking. I sat in the driver's seat, just breathing. My phone, which had been on silent, vibrated on the console. A new text, from Evelyn Vale. They will have to put a lien on their house to pay the bondsman. You did this. We will not forgive you. I took a screenshot. I forwarded it to Catherine. 2 days later, Ada Layton's office called me. Ms. Barnes, Ada said, we've extended a formal offer to the defendant, full cooperation and testimony against the Howard ring in exchange for a recommendation of a reduced sentence. The evidence you provided is the linchpin for the entire federal case. I need you to know this is now bigger than just your house. Sloane had a choice fall on her sword for her criminal partners, or save herself by burning them. That night, my mother called. I had not blocked her number. I knew this was coming. I answered. I did not say hello. There was just silence, and then a long, shuddering breath. They're going to send her to prison, my mother whispered. It was not an accusation. It was a statement of horrified disbelief. That is a possibility, I said, my voice empty. You can stop this. Her voice suddenly exploded. The old, familiar shriek. It's your complaint. You can tell them to stop. You can show mercy. Zara, she's your sister, your baby sister. She is a 30-year-old woman who tried to steal my life, I said. And you are my daughter, she screamed, the tears coming now, hot and angry. I am begging you, Zara, for me, for your father, for what is left of this family. Stop this. If you do not, if you let her go to prison, you are no longer my daughter. There it was again, the ultimatum, the final severance. Choose the lie, or be exiled. I stood in my clean, quiet, repaired living room, looking out at the ocean. The sun was setting, and the sky was a cold, beautiful, unforgiving purple. I took a breath. I choose the truth. I'm not pretending anymore. 10 words. She did not scream again. There was a sound, a terrible, strangled gasp, and then the line went dead. She had hung up on me. She had made her choice. I had made mine. The war of public opinion started the next day. The Vales, unable to fight me in court, took the battle to social media. It was a coordinated, vicious smear campaign. Evelyn, Derek, and a dozen cousins and family friends I had never met began posting. The posts were all variations on a theme: how a greedy, heartless sister is destroying her family over money. Pray for Sloane, a victim of her sister's cold ambition. Zara Barnes, the CEO who values her beach house more than her own blood. They painted me as a vindictive, lonely corporate monster. My phone buzzed with alerts as friends from college and even colleagues from Aurelia began seeing the posts. Zara, is this true? What is happening? I did not reply. I forwarded every link, every screenshot, to Catherine. Her response was not emotional. It was tactical. Within hours, her office had sent formal cease and desist letters to Evelyn, Derek, and every person who had shared the posts. The letters cited defamation, libel, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, and warned that a civil suit would follow. They are building our damages case for us, Zara, Catherine said, her voice sharp with predatory delight. Let them talk. Every post is another zero on the check they'll be writing you. The only call that mattered was from my own office, the head of Aurelia's board, a man I respected immensely, requested a meeting. The Veils campaign had reached my professional life. I did not wait to be questioned. I went to him proactively. I laid out the police report, the unredacted email chain, and the conspiracy charge. I did not make it emotional. I presented it as a security breach. He read the summary, his face grim. When he finished, he looked up at me. Zara, this is a horrific, personal violation. But what you did, your documentation, your reporting, your immediate containment of the financial threat, it's the most professional response to a crisis I've ever seen. Aurelia Systems stands with you, 100%. Take the time you need. This company is secure, and so is your position in it. The relief was so profound, it almost brought me to my knees. The family I was born into had disowned me for telling the truth. The company I had built a career in was supporting me for it. The pressure must have been too much for Sloane. At her next preliminary hearing, her lawyer presented the new strategy. She was no longer the defiant partier. She was the remorseful victim. She stood before the judge, weeping. I'm so sorry, she cried, her voice thick. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was manipulated. Derek, he and his friends, this Howard, they pressured me. They told me Zara wouldn't care, that she had so much. She wouldn't even notice. I was stupid, and I was weak, and I let them lead me. I just wanted my husband's family to think I was smart. It was a good performance. She looked small, broken, and genuinely remorseful. Ada Layton let the silence sit for a moment after Sloane's speech. Then, Ada stood. Your Honor, she said, it is a compelling story. However, it is a fabrication. She held up a single printed sheet. This is the first email in the chain, dated 3 months ago. It is from the defendant's laptop to the Howard alias. I'll read the first line. He said you could help. My sister has a place in Blue Harbor. She's never there. It's just wasted. It's not fair. I have a key. Ada looked at Sloane, her eyes devoid of pity. The defendant was not manipulated. Your Honor, she was the architect. She was the one who initiated contact. She was the one who saw her sister's success not as an inspiration, but as an asset to be stripped. The judge's face hardened. Sloane's sobs stopped, replaced by the sharp, hitching breath of someone who had just been caught in a fatal lie. A date for trial will be set, the judge said, her voice like granite. The town was buzzing. The Veils' social media campaign had quieted down after Catherine's letters. But the whispers were everywhere. I was the Ice Queen, the monster who was sending her own sister to prison. I said nothing. I went to work. I paid my lawyers. I let the whispers happen. My silence was a wall, and behind it, my file, the one built on screenshots, audio logs, police reports, and my sister's own words, grew thicker, heavier, and more undeniable every single day. I did not go back to the city. I could not. Leaving the house now would be a retreat. a concession that they had won, that they had successfully contaminated my sanctuary. So I stayed. I moved in. The first order of business was the cleansing. This was not a job for a cleaning crew. This was an exorcism. I hired a local contractor, a man with sun-weathered skin and honest eyes, and I gave him a simple instruction: I want everything they touched gone. The work began. The stained, violated white linen sofa was the first to go. I did not sell it. I did not donate it. I had the contractor and his team haul it to the dump. I watched it go. Then, the hardwood floors. They were too deeply scratched, too saturated with spilled alcohol and the memory of the intrusion. The team ripped them up, board by board. The sound of the pry bars and the screech of nails was a symphony of removal. I chose new flooring, a darker, tougher hickory. As they laid it, plank by plank, it felt like new armor being installed. The bar countertop, the one with the knife cuts and lime acid stains, was torn out. I replaced the white quartz with a slab of dark, unforgiving soapstone, and the teak railing on the deck. The contractor said he could sand the cigar burns out. I told him no. I had him replace the entire section. I wanted no trace. With every day, the house transformed. The acrid smell of cherry vape was replaced by the clean, sharp scents of sawdust, primer, and fresh paint. I was not just repairing the damage, I was erasing them. I was overwriting their memory with my own deliberate, controlled actions. And every single invoice, I photographed: the $5,000 bill for the new sofa, the $22,000 bill for the flooring, the $4,000 bill for the new countertop, the bill for the painter, the bill for the locksmith, the bill for the security technicians. I compiled them into a new file, just as I would for an audit. I attached them to the insurance claim, a meticulous, itemized list of the cost of their betrayal. Each receipt I saved was not a bill. It was a tally mark. It was me, piece by piece, clawing back the control they had tried to take. It felt solid. It felt righteous. The Vales and my sister were still trying to fight the emotional war. I was fighting the logistical one. One night, the phone I had set to "Do Not Disturb" lit up at 12:47 in the morning. A single text message from a number I did not recognize. "This is Derek. I know you hate us. I get it. But you're destroying Sloane. She's not sleeping. She's not eating. This is killing her. If you drop the charges, all of them, I will pay you back. For the party, for the cash, all of it. I'll get a second job. I'll work nights. I'll pay for everything. Just call it off." I'll pay for everything. The same empty, pathetic promise my father had made. They still thought this was about money. They still thought this was a debt that could be settled with cash. I typed back 2 words: "No negotiation." I forwarded the text to Catherine. I forwarded it to Ada Layton. It was just more evidence of coercion, another admission of guilt. A week later, Ada called me. Her voice was all business. "Ms. Barnes, I wanted to give you a personal update. We've been applying pressure, and the defendant's counsel knows their position is untenable, especially after we proved she lied in her preliminary hearing. Sloane Barnes has formally agreed to cooperate." I sat down on my new, unviolated sofa. "Cooperate how?" "Fully," Ada said. "She has agreed to a full proffer session. She will detail everything she knows about Howard. She will identify him, if she can, and she will testify against him and his organization in federal court." A cold, complicated knot tightened in my stomach. This was good. This was the right outcome, the systemic outcome. "In exchange," Ada continued, her voice careful, "the district attorney's office has agreed to recommend a significantly reduced sentence on her state charges. She's still facing time, but it will be much, much less than the maximum, and she'll be testifying against her husband." I was silent. "Ms. Barnes, this is a huge win. This Howard ring is a cancer. Her testimony is the key to cutting it out. You've done a major public service here." "I understand," I said, my voice hollow. "Thank you for letting me know." "Ada," I hung up the phone. I did not feel like I had won. I felt conflicted. I wanted justice, but a part of me, a dark, primal part, had to admit that I also wanted revenge. I wanted Sloane to stand in that courtroom and be held accountable for the specific, personal, intimate nature of her betrayal. I wanted her to pay for the cigar burns, for the lies, for the sleepless nights, for the fact that I now double-checked the locks on my own doors. But now, she was getting a deal. She was trading the man she had contacted to save herself. I understood, logically, that dismantling a multi-state fraud ring was infinitely more important than the maximum sentencing for one failed conspiracy. My Aurelia brain knew this. It was the correct, strategic move. But the part of me that was a daughter and a sister felt cheated. The old memories, the ones I kept buried, resurfaced. I saw Sloane, age 12, after she had accidentally broken my locked diary and read it aloud to her friends. My mother, forcing me to hug her, saying, "She didn't mean it, Zara. She's just impulsive. You're the older sister. You have to forgive her." I saw her at 20, after she had racked up $3,000 on my credit card, the one I had given her for college books, my father, quietly paying the bill, telling me, "It's just money, honey. She's just bumbling. She doesn't think. That's all. She's just bumbling. She's just impulsive. She's just bumbling. She just doesn't think." For our entire lives, our family had operated on this broken system. Sloane created the chaos, and I and my parents absorbed the consequences. We were her cleanup crew, and now she was doing it again. She had created a federal-level catastrophe, and she was bumbling her way into a plea deal, leaving a trail of destruction while the system focused on the bigger fish. I felt a sudden, sharp, agonizing pain in my chest. It was the memory of the day I gave her the key to this house. She had been crying, a genuine, rare cry of fear. Derek had lost his job, and their apartment lease was in jeopardy. "What if we're evicted? Zara," she'd whispered. "What if something happens, and I, the good sister, the capable one, had driven to the hardware store and made a copy?" I pressed it into her hand. "This is for a real emergency. Sloane," I had told her, my voice firm. "This is not for a party. This is for a fire, a hurricane. This is your go-to safety plan if the world falls apart." She had hugged me, her tears dampening my shirt. "Thank you, Z. I love you. I'll never, ever misuse this. I promise." That promise, that key, that moment of pure, ultimate trust. She had not just used it for a party. She had held on to it. She had studied my home, and she had taken that symbol of my protection and offered it to a criminal as the tool to gut my entire life. The betrayal was not just the party. It was the key. The weight of it, the rage, the grief. The disorienting conflict between justice and revenge was too much. It was a data set I could not parse. It was an audit I could not balance. For the first time in my life, I admitted I needed a tool I did not possess. I found a therapist, a woman in Wilmington, an hour's drive away. She was in her 60s. Her office was filled with books, and she listened to my entire, clinical, just the facts recitation of events without a single flicker of shock. "You are here," she said, in our second session, "because you are confusing justice with revenge, and you feel guilty for wanting the second, even as you are achieving the first." "I want her to pay for what she did," I admitted, the words tasting strange. "Of course you do," the therapist said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Revenge is a natural, human, emotional response to a profound betrayal. It is the desire to make the person who hurt you feel the pain you feel. It is an emotional loop." "And justice?" I asked. "Justice," she said, "is the opposite. It is not emotional. It is a logical, external, societal process designed to restore balance and uphold rules. It is about consequences, not feelings. What you are doing, with Ada, with Catherine. That is justice. It is clean." "It does not feel clean," I said. "It feels awful." "Because you are still stuck in the emotional loop," she said. Your job right now is to let the legal system handle justice, while you, in here, process the need for revenge until it is no longer a need, but just a memory of a feeling. I worked in that office. I processed. I learned to separate the two. Ada's office called again. The trial date for the Howard ring is set. As the primary witness who broke the case, and as the victim, you will be asked to give a victim impact statement for Sloane's sentencing. It will happen after she testifies. I need it in 2 weeks. I sat down at my new desk, in my new hickory-floored office, overlooking the calm, clean ocean. I opened a document. My name is Zara Barnes, and I am the victim. I wrote about the sofa and the money. It felt petty. I deleted it. I wrote again. This time filled with the white-hot rage of my mother's ultimatum. It felt too angry. I deleted it. I wrote about the emergency key, about the trust. It felt too soft, too vulnerable, like something Sloane's lawyer could use. I deleted it. I wrote about the Harbor Howard Drive. I wrote about the quitclaim deed. It was cold, clinical. It was just a police report. Deleted. I wrote and rewrote that statement, day after day. I wrote it 16 times. I tore up every single draft. Each one was either too angry, or too sad, or too cold. Then, on the 17th try, I found the words. It was not emotional, and it was not cold. It was simply the truth. It was not about revenge, and it was not about justice. It was just a precise, irrefutable statement of the consequences. It stood, as my therapist would say. I saved the file, as if on cue. Catherine called. Her voice was bright, almost cheerful. Just a heads up, the Vales finally did it. They officially filed that malicious prosecution suit we've been expecting. It's the most laughably weak complaint I've ever read. I felt a spike of panic. A lawsuit. They're suing me. Zara, relax. Catherine laughed. It's a desperate, last-ditch PR stunt. It's garbage, and they know it. I'm filing a motion to dismiss on the grounds of it being frivolous and retaliatory. It will be thrown out before it even sees a judge. Don't even think about it. It's just the last, dying hiss from a cornered snake. I hung up. I looked at the lawsuit notification. I looked at my saved victim impact statement. I closed the laptop. It was just before sunset. I walked out onto my new deck, onto the new, unscorched teak railing. I sat in one of the new chairs. I did not bring my phone. I did not check my email. I watched the sun dip below the horizon. I watched the sky turn from blue to orange to that deep, cold, final purple. I had been forced to fight a legal war, a financial war, and an emotional war, all at the same time. And I was winning. This was my house. I was reclaiming my peace, and I was doing it legally. I sat there until the stars came out. Sloane's agreement to cooperate was not an emotional event. It was a tactical one. Ada Layton, the prosecutor, began to treat me less like a victim and more like a strategic partner. Her proffer session was illuminating. Ada told me over the phone. We were speaking almost daily now. She's terrified, not of prison, really. She's terrified of Derek. And she's absolutely petrified of Howard. That's the leverage we're using. According to Ada, Sloane's testimony, given in a sterile room with her lawyer present, was a flood of corroboration. The man she knew as Howard was not just an email address. She had met him, twice, at a nondescript office park in Raleigh. She described him. She described his car. She gave us the name Cade Hollister, Ada said, her voice tight with professional excitement. He's not a ghost. He's a coastal operative for this ring. We've had our eye on him for an unrelated land fraud case, but we could never tie him to the digital side. Your sister just did. The investigation, which had been a state-level property crime, was now a coordinated operation with the feds. The Howard ring, they explained, was sophisticated. They did not just steal identities. They stole assets. They specialized in forging deeds and draining retirement accounts, using family members as their insiders. My case? Where the insider was caught before the final heist was the Rosetta Stone they needed to understand the entire operation, but they needed more. They needed to catch Hollister in the act of receiving the final payment and the go-ahead. "This is where it gets complicated," Ada explained, her voice dropping. "Hollister doesn't know Sloane has been arrested. Her bail was covered by the Vales, and she's been ordered to stay with an aunt, as far as he knows. The party was a bust, but the plan is still viable. He's been emailing her, getting agitated, demanding his $50,000 fee. And Sloane?" I asked, my hand tightening on the phone. "She's agreed to play her part. We are facilitating a conversation, a sting. Ms. Barnes." I felt a cold prickle. My sister, the bumbling, impulsive, selfish child, was now a key operative in a federal sting. The plan was simple. Under the direct supervision of Connolly and a federal agent, Sloane would re-engage with Hollister. She would tell him she had the money. She would tell him she was ready. "He's paranoid," Ada relayed a few days later, giving me the update. "The party bust made him nervous. He's not just taking her word for it. He's demanding a new set of proof-of-life documents." "What does he want?" "He wants a new, clear scan of your investment statement, and he wants a selfie from Sloane, inside your house, holding that day's newspaper, to prove she still has access and that you're not there." I looked around my newly repaired living room, at the hickory floors, at the soapstone bar. "You want her to come back here." The words felt like ash in my mouth. "Under full surveillance, Ms. Barnes, one agent posing as a utility worker outside, Connolly inside with her. You would be nowhere near the property. She would be in and out in 10 minutes. It's the final piece of bait." I thought of Sloane, standing in this room, faking a selfie for a criminal, all to save her own skin. It was the most perfect, grotesque irony. "Do it," I said. I spent that day at my lawyer's office in Wilmington. I could not bear to be in the same town. I sat in Catherine's conference room, drinking stale coffee, watching the clock, my phone face up on the table. At 3:15 p.m., it buzzed. Ada. She did it. She cried the whole time, but she did it. She sent the files. Hollister took the bait. He replied immediately. He said, "Good. The wire instructions are on the way. We move tonight." The next phase was a flurry of warrants. Ada explained it to me in rapid, clipped sentences. Hollister's reply allowed us to get a warrant for his physical location, his cloud servers, everything. "We have him. Zara. We have the whole cell. We're not just moving on him. We're moving on 7 separate locations, all at once, tonight." That night, I was back in the beach house. I could not sleep. I sat on the deck, the one place that now felt entirely mine. The house was silent. The new locks were set, but my heart was pounding, a hard, fast rhythm against my ribs. I was waiting. This was the culmination of everything. At 2:18 in the morning, my phone lit up the dark deck. It was Ada. I answered before the first ring finished. "Done," she said. Her voice was not excited. It was sharp, clear, and absolutely final. "We got him. We got all of them." I closed my eyes, my hand gripping the arm of the chair. The tension I had been holding in my shoulders for months, the constant, low-grade alertness, finally, blessedly, released. I did not realize I had been holding my breath until it came out in a ragged shudder. "What did you find?" I asked. "You don't want to know," she said. "But I'll tell you. Hollister's office wasn't an office. It was a factory. High-end laser printers, scanners, a professional notary seal press, with counterfeit seals for 3 different states, stacks of blank check paper, blank birth certificates, boxes of blank credit cards, the kind with the smart chips, and a ledger, a physical one, and a digital one. Seed phrases for dozens of crypto wallets. This wasn't just a fraud ring. Ms. Barnes, this was an identity theft corporation. Your sister, and your case, just brought down the entire Eastern Seaboard Division." I sat there, in the dark, processing the scale of it, the cigar burns, the stained sofa. That was the clumsy, Idiotic work of Sloan and Derek. This was the machine they had tried to feed me into. "Thank you, Ada," I whispered. "No," she said, her voice softening for the first time. "Thank you. You're the one who didn't back down. You're the one who kept the receipts. Go to sleep. Miss Barnes, you're safe." I hung up. I sat there as the sky began to lighten from black to gray. My hands, I noticed, were completely still. The aftermath was swift. The dam of public opinion, the one that had been held against me by the Vales' social media campaign, broke. The headlines were no longer, "Family Feud turns legal." The new headlines read, "Coastal Identity Theft Ring Busted. Federals Credit Local Woman." And the real victim, how a Blue Harbor businesswoman uncovered a multi-state conspiracy led by her own sister. The narrative had not just shifted, it had inverted. I was no longer the ice queen or the greedy CEO. I was the sharp-eyed professional whose meticulous documentation and refusal to be intimidated had led to a major federal bust. The very qualities my mother had called cold and unforgiving, the media now praised as precise and courageous. The legal fallout for the Vales was just as rapid. Catherine called me, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Good morning, Zara. I have some excellent news. The Vales' frivolous lawsuit for malicious prosecution. A judge just dismissed it, with prejudice." "What does that mean?" "It means it's over," she said, savoring the words. "They can never file it again, but it gets better. His Honor found the suit to be retaliatory and entirely without merit, which means he has ordered Evelyn and Martin Vale to pay 100% of your legal fees for having to defend yourself against it. Congratulations, Zara, you won, and they're paying for it." The final pieces of my old life slotted back into place. My financial recovery was complete. The bank had finalized the fraud investigation, and every cent the $1,500 in cash. The nearly $3,000 in fraudulent purchases had been refunded. My credit, which I had locked down, was now monitored 24/7. The loopholes Sloan had tried to exploit were now sealed with digital concrete. My professional life, which had been threatened, was now stronger than ever. The board at Aurelia, thrilled with the positive press and my demonstration of real-world security protocol, asked me to be the keynote speaker at their upcoming cybersecurity conference. The topic would be the human element, insider threats, and personal asset protection. My CEO said, "You're not just an expert, Zara. You're a case study." I thanked him, and I politely declined. "I don't want to be a symbol," I told him. "I'm not a case study. I'm just an executive who handled a security breach. I'd prefer to get back to my actual work." He understood. I was not, and would never be, a professional victim. The last call came from Ada. The federal case against Hollister was moving forward. Sloan's sentencing, and Derek's, would happen in conjunction. Sloan's testimony was ironclad, Ada said. Hollister is facing serious time. Because of that, the state is prepared to stand by its recommendation for her. It will be meaningful, but I wanted to ask you, as the victim, you have a voice here. You could, if you wanted, argue for a harsher sentence. You could argue that her cooperation was self-serving and that she deserves the maximum for the initial betrayal. No one would blame you. I thought about it. I thought about the dark, vindictive part of me that had wanted revenge. I thought about my mother, my father, and the key. "No," I said. "I don't want to argue for a higher sentence. Ada, I want to argue for a meaningful one. This isn't about revenge. This is about consequences. This is about the system working." "I understand," she said. "The sentencing is scheduled for 2 months from now. The judge will review all aspects. I will, however, strongly advise you to consider making that victim impact statement in person." "I know," I said. I looked at the file on my computer, the 17th draft. "I've already written it." "Good," Ada said. "You're the one who started this, Zara. You should be the one to finish it. You can't let them be the only ones telling the story in that room." She was right. I had been erased from my own home, disowned by my own family, and smeared by the veils. They had all tried to tell my story for me. I would be there. I would stand up, and I would speak. I would have the final word. The courtroom was quiet. It was not the restful quiet of my beach house. It was a heavy, pressurized silence that seemed to suck all the air out of the room. I sat in the front row, directly behind Ada Layton. I could feel the veils, 3 rows back. I could feel their animosity, a palpable burning heat on my neck. I did not turn around. Then, they brought her in. Sloane was not in the clothes she had been arrested in. She was in a bright orange jumpsuit, 2 sizes too big, the fabric swallowing her. Her platinum hair, which she had always been so proud of, was pulled back in a thin, greasy ponytail, revealing the dark roots she always meticulously covered. Her face was pale, puffy, and blotchy. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen. She looked up, her eyes scanning the room, and for a half-second, they met mine. I felt nothing, no pity, no anger, just a void. She quickly looked away, shuffling to the defense table. Her expensive lawyer stood. His silver hair and $1,000 suit seemed out of place in the sterile, state-level courtroom. He began his closing plea to the judge, his voice smooth and empathetic. "Your Honor," he began, "what we have here is not a criminal mastermind. What we have here is a tragedy of manipulation." He painted his picture. He spoke of Sloane's deep, profound, and abiding remorse. He talked about her weakness, her desperate need for approval from her husband and his influential family. He described her as a pawn, unduly influenced by the predatory Kate Hollister and the aggressive, controlling nature of Derek Vale, who was being sentenced separately. "Ms. Barnes made a terrible, terrible mistake," the lawyer said, gesturing to Sloane, who obediently began to cry. "But when given the chance, what did she do? She did the right thing. She cooperated, fully, bravely. She provided the testimony that allowed this state and the federal government to dismantle a dangerous multi-state fraud ring. She has already begun to atone for her actions. Prison is not the answer here, Your Honor. It would be a destructive, punitive act against a woman who was a victim herself, a woman who has already lost her family, her husband, and her reputation. We beg the court for probation, for a chance for her to heal, to repay her debt, and to reconcile with the family she loves." The lawyer sat down. The sound of Sloane's quiet sobs filled the room. Ada Layton stood up. She was not a performer. She was an auditor. "Your Honor," Ada said, her voice clear and precise, "the defense has painted a very moving portrait of a manipulated victim. It is, however, a complete fiction." She walked to the projector. "The defense claims profound remorse. This is the timeline of that remorse. Ms. Barnes only began to feel it after she was caught committing perjury in her preliminary hearing. When she claimed she was manipulated into participating, she clicked to the next slide. The defense claims she was a victim of undue influence. This, Your Honor, is the first email in the chain, dated August 9th. The sender is Sloane Barnes. The recipient is Kate Hollister. She initiated the contact. She solicited the crime." She clicked again. "The defense claims this was a mistake. This is the Harbor Howard flash drive, provided by the victim. It contains the scans of her sister's private signature. This is the Harbor Nest security log, showing my sister entering the property at 11:17 a.m., and this," she clicked again, "is the bank statement, showing a $500 ATM withdrawal at 11:45 a.m. the same day, from a branch 2 miles away. This was not a mistake. It was a plan. It was systematic. It was predatory." She turned off the projector and faced the judge. Her cooperation, while valuable, was not brave. It was a tactical, self-serving decision made only after her lies had failed, and she was facing the maximum sentence. She was not a pawn. She was the insider, the one who held the key, the one who betrayed a sacred trust for profit. The state asks that the sentence reflect the gravity of that intimate, calculated betrayal. Ada sat down. The silence returned, heavier this time. The judge looked down at me. Ms. Barnes, the court has read your written victim impact statement. It is one of the most thorough and precise statements this court has ever received. Do you wish to add anything or address the court orally? My heart gave one hard thud. This was it. Yes, Your Honor, I said. My voice did not shake. I stood up from the gallery. I walked to the podium, the one facing the judge. The wood was cool and smooth beneath my hands. I could feel Sloane staring at the side of my head. I could feel Evelyn Vale staring at my back. I did not look at them. I would not give them my focus. I looked only at the judge. Your Honor, my prosecutor and the defense have spoken at length about the evidence, about the fraud, the money, the conspiracy. But I am here to talk about the one piece of evidence that cannot be logged in a digital file. I am here to talk about the key. My voice was low, but it carried in the silent room. I gave my sister a key to my home. I told her it was for an emergency, not a party, not a vacation, an emergency, a hurricane, a fire, a moment of true, life-altering desperation. It was a symbol. It meant that no matter what, she had a safe place to land. It meant that I trusted her. I paused. She took that key. She took that trust. And she used it as a weapon. She did not use it to escape danger. She used it to invite danger in. She walked through my home, not as a sister, but as a burglar. She photographed my private life. She cataloged my assets, and she sold that key, that trust, to a criminal ring for a 10% commission. The defense speaks of manipulation, but the truth is, if Sloane had been desperate, if she had needed money, if her life was falling apart, she only ever had to do one thing. I finally turned my head. I looked at her. Her tear-streaked face was frozen, her eyes wide. Ask, I said to her, my voice cutting through her sobs. You just had to ask. I turned back to the judge. I have been asked by my family, repeatedly, to drop this, to show mercy, to handle this in-house. They are confusing justice with revenge. I am not here today seeking revenge. I do not want to destroy a life. My voice hardened. I am here because the law must have meaning. A boundary must have meaning. If a person can do this, so intimately and with such cold calculation, and face no real consequences, then there is no law. There is no justice. There is only enabling. I am asking this court to restore the meaning of the law. I am asking for consequences. I finished. Thank you, Your Honor. I sat down. As I did, Sloane broke. It was not a quiet cry. It was a loud, wrenching, desperate wail. Zara, please, she shrieked, all pretense of courtroom decorum gone. Please, Z, I am so sorry. I am sorry. Please, do not let them do this to me. Please. She was begging me, the victim, to save her from the consequences. It was the story of our entire lives, played out one last time. I looked at her. Her face was a mask of pure, theatrical agony. I held her gaze. I did not speak. I did not cry. I did not nod. I simply watched, my face impassive. I refused to absorb her chaos. I refused to be her emotional target. I had drawn my boundary. The judge banged her gavel. Order the defendant will be silent. Ms. Barnes, your apology, if that is what it was, is directed at the wrong person and at the wrong time. This is not your sister's decision. It is the court's. The judge looked down at Sloane. Her eyes filled with a cold disappointment. Ms. Barnes, I have reviewed the facts of this case. I have taken into account your cooperation with the federal task force. But I cannot ignore the profound and predatory nature of this crime. The violation of trust here is absolute. This was not a moment of desperation. This was a calculated conspiracy. Therefore, on the charge of conspiracy to commit wire and deed fraud, this court sentences you to 5 years in the state correctional facility. The court will make you eligible for parole consideration after the completion of 3 years. I heard a sound behind me. A sharp, strangled gasp. It was Evelyn. Furthermore, the judge continued, you will pay full restitution to the victim. The amount is set at $28,000 to cover the theft and the associated legal fees, plus statutory interest. Upon your release, you will serve 5 years of supervised probation. A condition of that probation is this: you will have no contact, of any kind, with the victim, Zara Barnes, no phone calls, no letters, no emails, no contact through a third party. A violation of this order will send you back to prison. Is that understood? Sloane had stopped crying. She was just staring, her mouth slightly open, pale with shock. She had believed, until the very last second, that she would be handled, that she would be saved. A bailiff moved behind her. Derek, who had been sentenced in an earlier proceeding, sat in the gallery, watching, his face completely blank. Evelyn Vale was bone white, her hands gripping the bench in front of her. Martin Vale had his head bowed, his face buried in his hands. Their power, their lawyers, their threats. It had all evaporated. The bailiff touched Sloane's arm. "Stand up, ma'am." Sloane stood, moving like she was underwater. The bailiff put her hands behind her back. The click of the handcuffs was loud. It was a sharp, definite, metallic sound. It was the sound of a lock finally, properly, engaging. As they led her toward the side door, Sloane turned. She looked back, her head sweeping the gallery. She looked at Derek, who just stared back at her. Empty. She looked at Evelyn, who looked away. Then, her eyes found me. I expected to see anger. I expected to see hatred. I expected to see pleading. I saw none of it. Her eyes were just hollow. The impulsive, fiery, selfish child was gone. The con artist had failed. The manipulator had no one left to manipulate. There was nothing left at all. They led her through the door. It closed. I stood up. Catherine gave my arm a single, firm squeeze. I nodded. I turned, and I walked down the center aisle. I did not look at the Vales. I did not look at anyone. I kept my eyes forward. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the courthouse. The air on the steps was bright, cool, and it smelled of the clean salt air from the ocean 3 blocks away. I took a deep, shuddering breath. It felt like the first clean breath I had taken in months. My phone, in my pocket, buzzed. A text. It buzzed again, and again. The noise. The family, the friends, the world, all rushing in, demanding my attention, my reaction, my emotional energy. I pulled the phone from my pocket. I looked at the screen as it lit up with their names. I pressed the power button on the side and held it. The screen went black. I silenced them. I put the phone back in my pocket. I looked up, past the street, past the small-town buildings. I could see the sharp, clear blue line of the horizon. I walked down the steps, and I went straight home. Thank you for listening to my story. I would love to connect with you. So please comment below with where you are listening from and share your thoughts. Please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear it.